Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is G. Wesley, and I'm a curatorial associate at in the Department of Media and Performance at MoMA.
I'm Lilia Taboada, and I'm also a curatorial associate at MoMA.
Together, we co-organized the exhibition Joan Jonas, Good Night, Good Morning with our colleague Anna Yanevsky, MoMA curator. It's an honor to host today's event. We're going to begin with an overview of the exhibition, Joan Jonas, Good Night, Good Morning, as well as an introduction to the work of artist and musician David Michael DiGregorio. Following that introduction, David will perform his song, Signal Telepathy, Petrichor, after which we will introduce two songs by David, entitled Temper Clay and Sobbing, which the artist will then sing. We'll conclude the event there. Joan Jonas, Good Night, Good Morning is the first full career survey retrospective in the United States dedicated to the visionary work of Joan Jonas. You can see on screen here Joan Jonas on stage in her most recent performance. This is a piece entitled Outtakes that was presented at MoMA earlier this year with the support of Hyundai Card. For more than 5 decades, Jonas has pushed the boundaries of art by bridging the media of performance, video, installation, sculpture, and drawing. Her imagery draws on a diverse set of sources that range from fairy tales and essays to myths and local folklore. She creates immersive, layered worlds that bridge performance and installation. Jonas is widely recognized as one of the most important artists of the second half of the 20th century and was central to the creation of media art as well as performance art. So as you can imagine, in many ways, there would be no Department of Media and Performance at MoMA without her contributions to the field. Spanning 50 years of Jonas's practice, this exhibition at MoMA was structured chronologically and organized around 4 major themes, which we'll speak to today. These themes included performance, technology, literature, and ecology. The title of the exhibition, as you can see in the title wall graphic here on screen, was Good Night, Good Morning. That references 2 works that were in the show. One of the works is from 1976, and the other is from 2006. You can see an angle of the work from 2006 here. In this piece, Joan reuses the format of the earlier black and white video, Good Night, Good Morning. In both works, Jonas records herself reciting the phrases, good morning each day upon waking, and good night before retiring for bed. Good Night, Good Morning, therefore, references how Jonas frequently revisits and readapts works and performances to create new installations, often incorporating a live element into them. Moreover, the title signals how Jonas has an abiding passion for reinvention, for renewal, revision, and reanimation throughout her work. Joan Jonas was born in New York City, where MoMA is home. She was born in 1936, and after she studied sculpture and art history, she returned to New York City, where she became one of the founding figures of performance art and video art in the 1960s and 1970s. This is an image of the first gallery in the exhibition, which we tried to focus on introducing audiences to Jonas's landmark performance works, which were created in the 60s and 70s. This was a time in which Jonas used mirrors as a way of reflecting and revealing broader questions of self-perception, of spectatorship, and of female identity. And you can see some of those mirrors on the left side of the image. She also created works that explored distance and perception, using large outdoor pieces, and we included a wallpaper of one of those large outdoor pieces in the gallery. Seen here is a better image where you can get a sense of that performance practice of Joan's. On the left are images from Joan's historic 1969 work, Mirror Piece, alongside on the right a reconstruction of that performance that was staged 55 years later this past spring. In Joan Jonas's Mirror Piece works, performers face an audience that is opposite them, and they carry large body-length mirrors moving in choreographed sequences. As the performers move, the mirrors reflect the audience and the surroundings, drawing the images of those into the space of the performance. Joan Jonas described the work this way, saying, quote, "I work with various devices, such as the mirror, to alter the audience's experience of space." In 1970, Joan began thinking about space in a new way through the lens of technology, which became central to her practice. That was the year that she traveled to Japan and purchased a Sony video camera. 2 years later, Joan incorporated video into her performances, creating a now iconic series of performances that used an alter ego that she named Organic Honey. Seen on the image of the left is Joan dressed as Organic Honey. She wears a provocative gown, an erotic mask that looks like a doll's face, and a feathered headdress. Joan used this alter ego, Organic Honey, to explore ideas of female archetypes, representation, and technology. In each performance, a camera woman captured the live video feed of Joan performing the actions of this alter ego. And the audience could see what was taking place there in a detail taking place on a monitor that showed that action. So they simultaneously watched Joan performing live as well as a video showing that action. It was in 1994, nearly 25 years later, that Joan continued and returned to Organic Honey, transforming the project by converting it into an installation artwork. That installation, which you can see on the right, was installed in our MoMA exhibition, and it composed of videos, photographs, costumes, and recreated props from the prior performances. This marked a major turning point that's still evident in Joan's work today, namely transforming performances or videos into installations and vice versa. And you can see in that image how Joan would have used the camera that would capture the image and then transport that image to a monitor nearby. From 1994 on, Joan would continue a practice of translating works from one media to another. The installation seen here is entitled The Juniper Tree, and it evolved from a performance that Joan created for children. This performance is one of her earliest installations, and it's the first that was explicitly based on a narrative. The Juniper Tree is based on a fairy tale of the same name that was written down by the Grimm's brothers. But like many folk stories, it was historically told and retold by women, mothers telling their stories to their children. From this point on, literature and folk tales and the myths from cultures around the globe would become a key theme in Joan Jonas's work. Similarly, Jonas was interested in the role of women as storytellers, authors, and narrative protagonists would continue to be a key influence in Joan's works, particularly her pieces Volcano Saga and Lines in the Sand. The final 3 galleries of the exhibition focused on the theme of ecology. Images of water appear throughout Jonas's early works, and in her major installation, Moving Off the Land, seen here, Jonas pays tribute to the oceans and their creatures. The work features large-scale theater boxes, as well as videotaped performances by non-trained child actors who recite excerpts from literary and scientific texts by writers such as Rachel Carson and Herman Melville. The work also features brilliant original ocean footage shot by David Gruber. David Gruber is a marine biologist who Joan Jonas frequently collaborates with. In the final room of the exhibition, seen on screen here, we presented a work that was commissioned by MoMA specifically for the retrospective. This piece was entitled Two Touch Sound. You can see that work in the foreground of this image. It is a 3-channel video sculpture created as a tribute to Joan Jonas's long-standing collaboration with the marine biologist David Gruber, as well as his study of sperm whale communication. The result of this piece is a captivating tribute to the wonder, the complex communication, and the intelligence of aquatic animals, whose existence is increasingly threatened by environmental damage.
Central research for this exhibition included consultation with the artist's archive of papers, teaching materials, notes, and ephemera, all housed at her loft in New York City, a selection on view here. With this as the largest retrospective in the artist's hometown, the MoMA exhibition offered a unique opportunity to bring her process and melding of work and life into the gallery through several years of visits to sort through her materials. Jonas also taught for several years in Stuttgart, Amsterdam, and Cambridge at MIT, where she and David Michael DiGregorio met and began a close friendship that has sustained over the years. So alongside props and notes, we featured a selection of teaching materials and videos with former students as performers, many of which became artists in themselves. As we turn to David Michael DiGregorio's work today, we do so thinking about Jonas's method of making and teaching art, including her encouragement to find art in everyday gestures and patterns, layer references from literature to music to film, and attune oneself to the nuance of mixing genres. Jonas's teaching materials proliferated across the multiple rooms and into the programming of the exhibition, including this large-scale wallpaper of her poem and teaching exercise at MIT titled Broken Symmetry, seen behind the screen. The idea of broken symmetry includes the same ethos of collaboration that is often found within jazz music. The work is comprised of a series of prompts, including, quote, give your friend a sentence, end quote, which perfectly demonstrates the ways in which jazz musicians improvise. They perform a solo, then pass the song and solo over to another performer, and so on and so forth to create a melody. Joan's prompt, like jazz, brings seemingly disparate materials together to build a final work. The collaborative structure of Broken Symmetry was the inspiration for the program Ask Your Friend to Give You a Sentence, in which a sentence was selected by Joan Jonas for each participant from an interdisciplinary group of artists, academics, performers, and poets. Each presenter developed a 7-minute response to their sentence listed on screen. David Michael DiGregorio's response was the inspired song Signal Telepathy Petrichor that we'll hear shortly. The idea of a signal across time and space, whether from one entity to another, one cosmic container to a terrestrial container, or within the self, as in remembering oneself from a past moment, was constant in DiGregorio's mind while constructing this work. The word petrichor means a pleasant smell that frequently accompanies the first rain after a long period of warm, dry weather. That word evokes a different type of signal, one given by the landscape and atmosphere. The idea corresponds to the middle portion of his composition, in which the lyrics, quote, maybe we are waves in a box, end quote, are sung. DiGregorio thought of a box as a kind of closed system, like a diagram in a physics textbook, and also a box that holds a signal, like a cathode ray tube. The lyric, quote, do you remember moving as yourself, end quote, is a reference to multiple methods of signaling and communication within works by Joan Jonas. DiGregorio thought of Double Lunar Dogs, a 1980s work by Jonas that tells the tale of a galactic space odyssey. In the video version of the work, there's a scene in which Jonas's character is asked repeatedly while being handed sundry objects, do you remember this? DiGregorio's lyric also references the movement of bodies in a work, Song Delay by Jonas, where performers clap blocks, creating a dissonance between sound and image as signals to the camera. As mentioned, David Michael DiGregorio is a friend and former student of Jonas's, and in his words, also a student of life, in life. The two, seen on screen, share a close connection since he met her through fellow artist and partner Sung-Hwan Kim in Cambridge, and then audited her course before attending class, working as a teaching assistant, and ultimately also performing with Jonas for her work called Lines in the Sand. We were thrilled to bring his musical practice into the exhibition in this way. Signal telepathy petrichor features many of the same tenets of layering different genres of art, sound, material, and history that we have been so inspired to see across Jonas's practice, albeit with DiGregorio's attention and training in sound and music. Based in New York and Honolulu, DiGregorio is trained in classical and improvised technique on the piano, Baroque music, modular synthesis, and approaches via musique concrète, a musical method for mixing recorded sounds. Musique concrète was first developed by experimental composers in the 1940s. DiGregorio has also made 16mm motion pictures while fascinated by structuralism and the idea of film as a musical composition. This experience, combined with the influence of having been a member of a 100+ person traditional gospel choir, experiments with pop composition, and performing electroacoustic songs, all informs his compositions today. Many pieces, especially those developed in musical collaboration with Sung-Hwan Kim, have a tectonic spatial aspect transmitted through layers of his voice and performance of melismatic storytelling. This is a method in which a syllable is stretched to fit beyond a single musical note. This beautiful harmony of musical styles is evident in signal telepathy petrichor. And the textures and some figures within the beginning part of the song are also cousins to the final song we'll hear today, called Sobbing, which we'll share more on following this first performance. And so without further ado, let's please welcome David Michael DiGregorio to the stage. Thank you.
receive me. Do you receive? Do you remember moving as yourself? As a slow motion drawn out signal. A slow motion drawn out signal. We are only waves in a box, in a box, in a box. Signals reach you. We participate in the wider landscape. Near and far, near
Bravo. Thank you so much, David. We'll hear two more songs shortly, but before we share a little more information, a reminder to put your microphones in your ears, plug them into the translator device, and press power and channel 1. The next songs, we're excited to have more of David Michael DiGregorio, and we'll share a bit more. The first work that he'll be playing next is titled Temper Clay, and it's the title composition for a 2012 film by Sung Hwang Kim, made in musical collaboration with DiGregorio. The film that you see a still from on screen features lyrics and title from the story of King Lear, the Shakespeare play, which centers around a father who divides his kingdom amongst his daughters and ultimately banishes one. Kim borrowed this familial narrative and reimagined it to analyze the dynamics of the contemporary Korean family from the perspective of different generations and social classes. The work begins with Kim assembling and reorganizing this text of King Lear's angry tirades from Shakespeare's play. DiGregorio's musical composition came towards the end of the working process for the filmic version seen here, while most of the other sounds that we'll hear were developed from sketches before an intense shooting period. The imagery that DiGregorio took in during the shoots, Kim's immersive direction and writing, as well as the remixed Shakespeare text, really drove the artist DiGregorio into a frenzy in the studio while recording. He worked with the skeletal text structure that Kim set before him and developed the harmonically complex piece of music that we'll hear shortly. The song also has a central presence in a multimedia installation version of Kim's work. Much like the installation, the media brings various types of sonic material and histories together, informed by the intense artistic collaboration between the two. DiGregorio and Kim workshopped the composition even before traveling to Korea to film. It includes actual concrete sounds of thunder from a field recording by DiGregorio during a storm in New York the year prior. Fast forward to workshops in which those same recordings come alive as Kim and DiGregorio remember trying to find or sing the sound of thunder after each stroke of lightning that they witnessed. As process, the two discuss tonal dissonance as well as discourse on chromatic shifts in musical modernism, which means using all available tones in the Western scales. And this idea is also tied to the writing of philosopher Theodor Adorno. They discuss the connection between sonic and psychological ruptures. For instance, the ties between psychological splits, musique concrète, and dogr. These genres all involve tonal bending and breaking, and the song and film accordingly feature several elements that zigzag, as Kim puts it. In Temper Clay, you'll hear the whining intonations and the buildup of various vocal gestures into angry oaths and yells. In terms of the relation between the song's tempo and the text, it was actually conceptualized to be very slow as a way to contemplate meaning and sound within each word. So words are drawn out to elongate the experience of the meaning behind them. One of the lines is, quote, "What is the cause of thunder?" End quote. This opens the song. And in typical speech, that phrase takes about 2 to 3 seconds to say. In Temper Clay, DiGregorio sings it across 53 seconds. The word what alone takes about 18 seconds to complete. The installation also adds to this sonic effect. Early on, before the film was started, Kim discussed with DiGregorio one person becoming many instead of an actual choir employing many distinct voices. This concept aligns with the methods of mixing and choral training heard in DiGregorio's practice, and were then reflected in the sound design of the eventual installation seen here at MoMA. The installation includes up to 8 pairs of stereo monitors played at low volume, offering an intimate experience for any listener standing close by. That same effect also creates a textural choral din when the multiple pairs of monitors are heard at a distance. So some of these stereo pairs were also built directly into benches like the one that you see at left and seats designed by Kim. At MoMA, metal sculptures seen at right with the names such as Tip of Spherical Form reflect the sound of the film and David DiGregorio's music. This is a front view of those same sculptures. The choral sound lends itself also to DiGregorio's melismatic style mentioned earlier, and this idea of transposition that Kim finds central to the work overall. So the idea of taking the same story and putting it in a different place, taking the sounds from one entity and inserting them into another, or taking words from one text and elongating them to enact a new meaning. In addition to installation, film, and DiGregorio's song, the last time the work was presented was within a Read Aloud Lyrics concert. This event was part of an ongoing series of concerts that underscore the ways that Kim treats and directs texts that are set by DiGregorio. As with Temper Clay, these texts are often received or perceived differently as they fall on different ears, play in different times or places, and make their way through different systems of propaganda or education.
Following David's Temper Clay performance, he will sing his song Sobbing. David began developing Sobbing in 2015 when Sangwon Kim received time to develop an operatic theater piece at the Asia Cultural Center in Gwangju on the occasion of its opening. For that presentation, Sangwon Kim and David Michael DiGregorio premiered A Woman Whose Head Came Out Before Her Name, an experimental operatic work that at the time was their largest performance to date. The piece worked with the subject of national borders and intergenerational conflict. It enlisted a cast of multinational and biracial origins to explore tropes drawn from theater, history, and literature as shapes within a singular performance. Throughout the work, David Michael DiGregorio sang and played the operatic piece that would include in one moment Sobbing. At the time of making this performance, David and Kim had worked together for 9 years. As DiGregorio recalls of this work, the process started with some short poetic texts, which Sangwon Kim wrote, and this sparked discussions about structures, to which DiGregorio responded on a daily basis. Sangwon Kim notes the following about the development of this piece, quote, "At first, I wrote my half of an unrequited duet with Roberto Bolano's prose poem, Prose from Autumn in Genoa, inspired by his kaleidoscopic arrangement of time in space. Then I visualized each paragraph, after which I arranged the movements required in the visualization into a script, which conducted the beats and measures of all technical and performative labor involved in this piece. Although others on stage strummed in, David Michael DiGregorio was the singer who sang and played this operatic piece from beginning to end," end quote. As the work developed, DiGregorio would create a small song for each text by Sangwon Kim as a first gesture. For example, a gesture such as the sound of lamentation. From there, they investigated how the result might weave into a single piece of music in a different yet unifying manner, yet belonging to the same body. In this performance, DiGregorio and Sangwon Kim explored mirroring, a key concept in the work of Joan Jonas, as well as ideas of repetition and the canon. In the instrumentalization, David considered gliding instrument movements as a key influence, as well as sobbing gestures and operatic voice. When composing work for MoMA's event Ask Your Friend to Give You a Sentence, a program organized in conjunction with Joan Jonas' Good Night, Good Morning, David thought of the previous song, Signal Telepathy, Petrichor, which we just heard, as a continuation of the textural language of this song, Sobbing, which David will perform shortly. Exploring for this piece various kinds of instrumentalizations that included a gliding crying instrument, as well as the melodica run through the shimmering sounding whirls of a Leslie cabinet, and the slide whistle, which will be used here today. In planning this program, the song Sobbing came to mind for David when he considered songs that directly and indirectly connected to Joan Jonas. Following Songwon and David's performance in Gwangju, DiGregorio would again perform Sobbing in a tribute to Joan Jonas as part of a 2015 event. This event was held at MoMA PS1. In another gesture of mirroring, shadowing, doubling, and looping, DiGregorio sang the piece Sobbing once and then invited friend and opera singer Elizabeth Jane Dudley Baker to sing the same piece, following David's rendition. A back-to-back set of sobbing gestures that extended Kim's lyrics, which I will read here. Is it a sobbing that I hear? She speaks of what can only be described as her own problem. Or he simply says, it is a sobbing that I hear. The 2015 event in which David presented this at MoMA PS1 was entitled In the Shadow a Shadow, the work of Joan Jonas. The program invited DiGregorio along with other artists to perform tributes to Joan's influence on their work. Through David's brilliant tribute, the program demonstrated not only Joan Jonas's enduring influence as a groundbreaking artist, but as a collaborator and as a friend and as a longtime professor who continuously engages in dialogue with artists of a younger generation, including David Michael DiGregorio. And with that, please welcome David back to the stage to perform Temper Clay and Sobbing. Thank you.
about her heart. Oh, strike her young bones. From her derogate body never spring a babe to honor her. From her derogate body never spring a babe to honor her. Old fond eyes, beweave this cause again. I'll pluck you out and cast you with the waters that you lose to temper Is it a sobbing that I hear? She speaks of what can only be described as her own problem. Or he simply says, it is a sobbing that I hear. Carried in a melody, what accompanies is a cloud of anxiety that stays afloat on its own wheel, although it might be of use in the future. This day it digs her into a maudlin hole. Everyone is all ears. Her ineffable sorrow is as modest as the demonstrative poster. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much, David. And thank you, Hyundai Card. This concludes the MoMA performance art presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.